Hey everyone. Hello, hello. This is Lisa Graves. Welcome to the 5, 8 and a half, your midweek break. I'm Lisa, and I'm here not with Nadine Smith this week, but with my wonderful friend, Greg Olear. And you know the routine, it's 5 stories, 8 minutes, and a chance to refuel. We sort of slow things down to sip, reflect, and remember
Almost
you
sip.
are not alone. But this week has been a long week. And I think in dog years, it's been like a long month, long year.
Yeah.
So yeah, how are you, Greg? How are you doing? Like, that's the wrong question. I used to not ask this question in the previous regime, and I need another. What music are you listening to? What show are you watching? That's what I should ask.
I'm not watching, football's back on. So I
Yes.
always feel better when there's like sports on that I like, even if I don't care that much about. It marks the time, and it's really the ultimate reality TV, like before reality TV. So I enjoy it, and it gets my mind off, things that are I don't know, things have been not great. I don't think I would say not great generally in the United States. I feel like you know Nadine picked a good week to take off, and
Not that we're trying to give you a guilt trip, Nadine.
no, I'm jealous. I'm taking off. I'm leaving next week, so it's fine. But this has been a week. I mean,
Yeah.
I can tell, like, talking to people in my life who don't normally talk to me about politics. When they start talking about politics, it's penetrated the bubble to some degree. So,
Yeah.
it's on everybody's mind. Things are on everybody's mind. People are trying to figure out how to behave, without the jackboot coming down upon us. And but other than that, it's great. It's nice to see you. It's nice to be here. Nice to see everybody in the comments. And I'm excited to talk to our guests. So
Yes. Well, I was going to say, one of my favorite anecdotes is from the biography of Earl Warren. Earl Warren is my second favorite Supreme Court justice of all time. My favorite is Thurgood Marshall, my hero. Not that you need my button that says Thurgood Marshall, but Earl Warren, back in the sort of innocent days of a few decades ago, some of these reporters were obsessed. They thought that the Chief Justice was so political, Earl Warren, because he dared to read the Constitution as it was written, like the equal protection of the law, meaning you can't have racial segregation in schools, or a right to counsel for Mr. Gideon, who had been accused of a crime in Florida and didn't have a lawyer. And so at one point he sat down with a reporter and the reporter thought he was going to have a gotcha question. What part of the newspaper do you read first? He asked Chief Justice Warren, thinking he'd say, the editorial page or the politics page. And Earl Warren replied immediately, the sports page. And the reporter was shocked, and he said, why? What? Why? And he said, because it's the only part of the news that covers human triumph consistently.
Oh, that's yeah. It's true. I like watching grown-ups be really, really happy, which is ultimately what it's all about. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also feel like I watch HBO's Real Sports. That show is also fantastic. It has all these amazing athletes talking about their lives and their determination and their victories and their defeats and their willingness to just get back up and, punch again. And I think we have so many amazing, inspiring athletes. So I'm not as big of a football fan as you. I'm a fair weather football fan, but I do appreciate that sports in general, with rare exceptions, does not involve Trump at all. And that is
He's
so
trying his
brilliant.
hardest. He's trying really hard to insert himself in there. And it's true, though. It is an apolitical, place generally, for the most part. So, which I also like about it. Also, I should say the sports writers are generally really good. Like, the writing is really good because there's so many people want to do it that they pick people that are really good writers and can do stuff. And I've noticed that there is a little bit more subversion going on in the sports pages these days than one would think.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that.
And those who have taken a stand, whether it was Muhammad Ali back in the day or Colin Kaepernick, or, the NBA, really, in the wake of the murder, the live murder of George Floyd, they've taken stands, and those have been derided by some, but I think they've been important moments as well. So yeah.
It's good. I like it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of speaking of the man who I'm so glad is mostly not on the sports that I watch, we many folks who tuned in today saw the pageantry of the pomp and circumstance of the former colonial empire, the empire that ruled over our colonies before 249 years ago. We had a revolution to throw off the British monarchy, but they've been obviously longtime allies since before World War II, but in particular since World War II. And Trump, among the many things he's shattered and bent and harmed, one of those things has been the relationship with one of our most important strategic allies in terms of security and other issues. But there he was today or I guess now tonight. I don't know. The time change always befuddles me. But there he was over there with the carriage and the horses and the.
Oh, I thought it was really cute. Like when they went on the merry-go-round, he didn't. I guess he's too like infirm to go on the horsies, so they put him in the little carriage thing. So you can see the little merry-go-round horsey in the back there. Isn't this cute? I think it's really cute. There's no sound effect. You can't hear the sort of music of the merry-go-round going round and round. But I thought,
whenever I think of trumpet music, I think of I'm going to sing badly. Yeah, that carnival.
That's the one. That's the one. Music. I mean, and then he's reading this speech, and the newspapers will just quote the speech, but if you watch the clip of him reading, he can barely read. I mean, it's really embarrassing. Like it's like a third grader up there trying to give a book report. He said the word sovereigns, and he seemed so proud of himself that he got it out without fucking it up. Like he was like, "Ooh, look at me!" Said the word sovereigns, and Marco Rubio staring at him like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god." And it's just an embarrassment.
Well, I was glad that the British family held the line on not having a teleprompter there for him, especially after all the nonsense he and his fanboys made over Biden and the teleprompter. So I was glad he had to actually read it, but he read it like a comedian who's like, has some sort of gallstone passing partly between some words. It's crazy.
It was very strange, but I mean, and then in the UK, there's so much protest going on with this guy. All of the Epstein stuff and the images that they managed to project on the turret of Windsor Castle and all this stuff. And then it calls to mind the fact that, Charlie's little brother there is pretty good friends with Epstein, allegedly, and has been named, and was reportedly kind of taken out of doing the official whatever the hell it is they do by his mother when she was still alive because of all this stuff.
Yep.
And, and we recall that Epstein, we're going to talk about Epstein later, got his start really at the knee of Robert Maxwell, who was, British citizen and a, Ponzi guy and also friends with the Queen. I mean, so they all know each other really well. Like Charles knew Maxwell, they know Ghislaine, they know all these people know each other.
Yeah. And Murdoch was at the dinner, right? So there's the decrepit Rupert Murdoch, who just managed to wrangle the control of his empire to his like-minded son from his children who dare to have an independent point of view. And he was over there also at the dinner because, of course, there he is.
Yeah, it was a weird. Yeah, that Sam Altman AI guy was there.
Yes,
it's like why are you here? Are we gonna have an AI king now? Is that kind of what it is? I was kind of hoping that Charles would do something kingly. Like a king can like get away with some shit, but it seems like he's not trying to get away with nothing. He's just being a pathetic older brother of this alleged pedophile, and it just seemed pretty sad to me. Like all of the pomp is so ridiculous. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that seeing it in that form and the sort of tribute to Trump, the sort of trying to use that state dinner process to maybe get favors from him, it just made me want to play Clash songs over and over again. You know the ones. You
Yeah,
know the ones.
yeah. London, we can play that. We can play The Smiths, The Queen is Dead. We can play Anarchy in the UK. There's lots of
There's lots of
good.
good punk responses to the Thatchers of the world. But I mean, I do think I will say in King Charles's defense, which is a sentence I never thought I'd utter, he has been very devoted to trying to protect the environment and address the crisis with climate, and is someone who believes in science. And though I don't think anyone should be king anywhere in the world, I do appreciate that he, unlike our sort of theoretical king here in the United States, he actually believes in science. And so I have to give him that,
Yeah. As kings go, we could do worse, I suppose. There's a cartoonist named Brandon Looper, and he did a cartoon. I don't know if it was yesterday or today, where it's Charles and Donald walking along, and Charles says something like, "I sympathize. I know what it's like to have to wait a long time to be king." And I thought that was pretty funny, But that's where we're at.
Thanks to the Supreme Court. Thanks to Supreme Court. Kingdom. They John Roberts and Company Kingdom, which is the subject of my book, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to segue over to the latest corporate media news of disaster and outrage, which is the news that just broke right before the show about ABC polling Jimmy Kimmel, who's been so, brave and smart and funny about, this debacle that we're living through. And I was sad to see that happen. I suppose it was inevitable in the sense of what we already saw CBS do to Stephen Colbert, that any of these comedians that has a broad reach, who dares to be critical in ways that some don't like, could lose that perch. But I was sad, but I'm sad to see it. Greg, what do you think about that? What just happened?
I blame Matt Damon. That's a great inside baseball Jimmy Kimmel comment right there. Good job. There's a couple of things at play here. Like, I've been thinking about free speech a lot. And again, we're going to talk about that too in a little while when we bring our guest on. But like, he's allowed to say whatever he wants, but he's also in that job. He's the face of a company. And the way that those network shows works is they are all, run by these affiliates. And if they have complaints by all the affiliates and all the affiliates don't want to run it, that is a real problem in the thing. Now, should it be that way? No, but they have the right to do that. It's stupid that this is happening, but Jimmy Kimmel will be fine. Jimmy Kimmel's going to go on whatever he's going to do, and more people will watch him now than watched him before. It's pathetic that ABC it's ABC, right? Is that what
ABC? ABC Disney.
Yeah. Well, just completely capitulated. That's pathetic and awful, and they, obviously are a bunch of sad cowards, which they shouldn't be. They have all the freaking resources in the world to hire as many attorneys as they want to defend all this stuff, but instead, at the first blush of anything, they get rid of him. And maybe there's economic factors, maybe the entire late night thing is changing the landscape, and everything's going to shake out in different ways. I mean, I think what's going to happen ultimately is this is going to Streisand effect on them, and he and Colbert both are going to wind up doing stuff where more people watch them than watch them before.
I mean, I think we are in this period of change in terms of like, what are the models for communications? What is media? There's no more there are no more real limits on or at least there's no longer just 4 stations, basically 4 national stations. There's a lot of opportunities. I do think the situation with these massive media companies, I'll share a little anecdote which now is more precious because of what's happening. But I was once called to be a progressive in the room of an insider meeting that the Aspen Institute put together. I'm not sure which person decided to have me in. They were I decided I was going to make the most of my one moment in the room with some of these big wigs. But the thing that happened then that clearly is not happening now is there was a big conversation with some of these titans of these companies. And one of the big guy, literally and figuratively, from Gannett was there. And they were having a conversation about what was happening. This was maybe 10 years ago, I would say. They were having a conversation about media and the obligation to cover the news and what it means. And the Gannett guy, I mean, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but what he said was, they don't have an obligation to cover the city council or what's happening in Africa. They're a for-profit company and they're giving people what they want. Now, I've had some great reporting, seen some great reporting from some Gannett reporters since then, and some of those news outlets that are under that banner are still doing investigative reporting. But at least from the standpoint of the guy at the top, he was like, we have no obligation. Our obligation is to our shareholders, it's money. And the ABC News guy in the room, whose name escapes me, objected directly to the Gannett guy and said, we have a First Amendment right as the press. We have a special obligation to cover the news. People need to know what's happening in their local towns. They need to know what's happening on one of the most populous continents in the world and how it affects us. And it was that sort of clash between the traditional view of what a news station or a newspaper or news outlet was supposed to be, and what this sort of emerging conglomeration of just greed heads was trying to turn the newspaper and news business into. And now here we are. Fast forward to ABC capitulating in this way. And the other thing I'll say, and this is really truly aside, this is a classic Lisa aside.
Good.
But a long time ago, I read this biography of Walt Disney. Because I was, interested in Walt Disney and the mouse, the mouse I loved so much as a kid. And, he had a mustache, but then after he died, his company had this rule that none of their employees could wear mustaches. And it was like a very small thing, but one of those things like, someone starts with this idea, obviously it was a big money-making idea for Walt Disney and his kingdom. But then the company comes along and it becomes its own sort of bureaucratic thing. Now, that was many years ago, and since then Disney became much more progressive, much more interested in protecting equality, and Orlando became a place where people could thrive, where LGBTQ rights were more honored maybe in some places in the state. So of course it was targeted by Ron DeSantis and the right. It always comes down to this sort of repression of people who are advancing equality, or even companies that dare to advance equality, which we're seeing on steroids now. So thanks for indulging me in defense of the mustache.
If you can pull off wearing a mustache, you should wear the mustache. There's like a half dozen people on earth that can pull it off, though. That's the thing.
I personally don't really like mustaches, but it's not my face. So I defer. If someone wants to wear a mustache, they can wear a mustache.
Tom Selleck can wear a mustache. Don Mattingly can wear a mustache.
Yeah.
I don't know. End of list. So, but before we get to the end of the time, I wanted to say that, and I like all these Lisa asides, by the way. I wanted to say that, Kimmel, as a celebrity whose job it is to go out and entertain, he always has to walk that line with the advertisers and everything else. It's part of his job. What I really, really object to is people getting fired from their jobs that have absolutely nothing to do with what they're saying online. Yeah. Somebody that posts something online, no matter what, that's in this moment, and then getting fired from a job like as an airline pilot is madness. That's fucking fascism.
Yeah.
Nobody's saying it. Nobody's saying let's do violence. People are expressing their opinions, and people, God damn it, we have the right to be assholes. It's in the First Amendment. And if we didn't have the right to be assholes, none of these assholes would be in charge. They should be pro-asshole.
That does make me pause to say there was one decision written by Antonin Scalia that I actually thought was spot on, and it was about the importance of protecting. Of the First Amendment was protecting from political speech, that was core. I think he was wrong in saying that it didn't protect other types of speech, or other types of speech were lesser than political speech, but he at least got that one part right, that the essence of the First Amendment certainly protects protects political speech. But I was going to say, since we're also, talking about pop culture, I have been watching Hacks, and it's a great series. And
That's the timer. I don't know if you can hear it.
Oh, I can barely hear it. Anyway,
Hacks.
if you're not watching Hacks, it really is good, and it has a plot line that's similar to what's been unfolding today. So I just thought I would flag it for folks.
I didn't know that.
Pretty good show. Pretty good show.
Yeah, maybe we'll get a woman having a late night show now.
Yeah,
like on that fictional show Hacks.
Who knows? Who knows? Speaking of amazing women, we have a wonderful guest, and I think you're going to introduce her. Greg.
I'm going to introduce her. She is. You all know who she is. She needs no introduction. We'll introduce her anyway. She's a journalist. She's an author. She's a novelist. She's a columnist. She has a great Substack that one came out today that was wonderful. She's a friend of the show. She was, in fact, our very first guest on the very first 5/8. So, Nina Burleigh, welcome. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you so much for that introduction. And you're my publisher. You're my fiction publisher. You know that.
Yeah, it's a really good novel, by the way.
My novel is published by Four Sticks Press, which,
that's right.
Which Greg is he's a media magnate in New York State. And in any case, I was invited to that dinner at Windsor Castle, and I was like, I can't go. I have to fill in for Nadine tonight. So I was a little delayed because I'm trying to write a tweet. I was looking for a picture of Trump's mother, because every time he goes to the UK, I wrote that book about the Trump women, and I did a lot of research into the women. And the mom was born in this, in Scottish, in like an island closer to Iceland than to London, but in Scotland. And she was impoverished, and she came over here and worked as a maid in the Carnegie Mansion, and then met Fred Trump. And every time he goes to England, I'm like, why? Or, when he went to meet the Queen and he brought the kids, like any other American politician would be like, hey, the son of a maid is president of the United States. This is the American dream. And they don't even acknowledge it. I found it in the census, and it's been, I wrote it in the book, and it was reported a little bit, but they completely ignore it. I don't even know if the kids know that about their grandmother. I mean, it's like they're embarrassed about it because they want to be born to the manor. And it's just so pathetic.
Yeah.
So it's so sad. But anyway, it's many things. Yeah, I'm deviating from the topic of the evening. I know, but I was trying to find a picture of her to put on a tweet. That's why I was off to the side here.
There's only the one picture where her head is all,
No, there's an old picture of her where she's a young woman sitting on a window ledge in Scotland, and looking longingly into the castle. She was like, that's where he gets his obsession with guilt things. From the
GILT, but no
apparent
relationship with guilt.
No, GILT. The Home Depot fixings, fixtures in the Oval, which cost $59.99 each or something.
I volunteer at some point at the end of the term to go in there and personally use a screwdriver to help peel them off the walls. I'd be happy to help with that.
I mean, it's going to be like after, the Ceausescu's disappear or something. We're, not saying that anything like that's
no. It'll be like cataloging Imelda Marcos's shoes.
Yeah.
How many pieces of guilt were glued to the wall here?
Yeah.
It's Soviet light, it's like Fabergé Egg McMuffin. That's the style. I think it's pretty good. So,
Nina, it's great to see you. I had the joy of being on Substack with you earlier this year when I was first trying to figure out how this whole Substack Live thing works, and you were such a gracious host and friend.
I still don't have the Substack Live thing down, but I'm getting there. I have the lights now, and I do it once in a while. So,
well, definitely people should subscribe to your Substack and read your books and your amazing reporting. It really is just so deep and smart and sharp in a good way, funny and revealing. I just have been really grateful to have the chance to get to know you as an amazing investigative reporter and analyst, Nina.
Well, likewise, Lisa, and I'm glad that you came on the Substack, and thank you for all that you're doing, explaining what's going on with the legal, the challenges that we're facing here.
What challenges? Everything's fine. It's all fine, right?
We're good. Today is U.S. Constitution Day, so it's just fitting that the president would mark today for a visit to our former colonial rulers.
That's really funny. Yeah. I mean, it's not funny. It's sad, but yeah.
I mean, you were talking earlier about how the protest, there's so much more protest over there than there is here, in the mother country or father country or whatever England is to us. It's amazing. I mean, they're so witty also with their, but also brave. I mean, we're not doing anything like that. We should be, I'm trying to get somebody to make a debt clock type, system for one of the buildings in New York that would just ticker the amount of dollars the Trump family is making and has been making since day one of this administration. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
If there's no app developer,
you'd have to have so many digits.
Yeah. And if there's an app developer out there, I'm definitely looking for somebody who would try to put the money together for that. Maybe it doesn't have to be on a building. It can be just a widget online on some, web page.
Oh yeah, widget would be good.
Yeah, just the ticker, because it's just going up and up and up. I mean, that's why he's doing the Times.
He's doing a story that's not being reported. That's not being taught. It's being reported on, but not talked about. Is this, this recent UAE thing where they just
no, it is. I mean,
they're just funneling him money.
That's why that's why he's suing the Times for $15 billion. Yeah. It's not because, and the 4 reporters, he doesn't want them to they have eyes just fastened on this, they're watching where that money is coming from, and good for them. I
just want to say I read that complaint against the New York Times, the absurd $15 billion figure. Like, it's just such a joke. And if there were more, even the first few paragraphs of the complaint, it's almost like they were dictated by Trump. No really good lawyer would actually write sentences like that complaint, the way that complaint is written. And I'm not saying that they're not really good lawyers. I'm saying that they have a client.
Oh, I am. Yeah,
I'm going to say that too. I mean, you're being polite to the members of your profession, but I cannot understand how his entire life he's been able to find lawyers who are willing to go down to the bottom with him.
Yep.
And they're willing, and like Todd Blanche. I mean, today Todd Blanche was on, what was it, CNN, and he was asked, is Ghislaine Maxwell, did you find her credible? And he said he acted very appalled that question would even be asked to him. First of all, he acted offended. And then he said, it's really up to the American people to decide. Are you kidding me? You're the Deputy Attorney General?
Yeah. So there's 2 things I'm going to say. And one is not a defense of my profession, which is in ethics class, with the exam, I remember realizing that I would basically have to do the opposite of whatever my instinct was in order to pass the test. I was like, what should happen here is X. But no, that is not, as a lawyer, I cannot do that. It's the opposite. And so I passed the ethics exam with flying colors, because I was like, okay, do not engage your human instinct. Think about what you have to say.
It's built in. So really, let's kill all the lawyers.
No. But when you think of Todd Blanche, I urge you to think about Kellyanne Conway, because when she was saying things like alternative facts, like I did not realize, because when I first encountered her, I sort of, not personally, but in the world at large, she was a pollster. That's what she had this whole polling firm that Leonard Leo ended up buying through a secret deal that I think Heidi Presvilla helped uncover, and it's really fascinating behind the scenes stuff. But I thought of her as a pollster, and I was like, why is she, and she obviously had this huge job in the first Trump campaign, like the first woman to have this campaign job after Manafort and his corrupt, connections got exposed. But then she got her job title was in the White House counsel's office, counselor to the president. And it was then that I realized, oh, she's a lawyer. So she's basically treating this like, I will say whatever my client needs to be said to defend my client. Now, that's not how the Justice Department usually works, to be fair. What Blanche has been doing and what Bonnie's been doing, like, that's not actually how the Justice Department works. I was there for both the part of the Clinton administration and part of the George W. Bush administration. I worked with the attorneys general, with Ms. Reno and with Mr. Ashcroft, along with other people. And the notion that the attorney general is basically like the private lawyer of the president is foreign to that role. But if you think about Blanche, not really as deputy attorney general, which is his formal title that the Republicans confirmed into, and the title that has us paying him, like, if you think of him actually really as just using that title to be Trump's lawyer, then everything he says is in service of basically continuing to defend the client that he was a criminal defense attorney before. And Bondi, continuing to defend the man that she was a defense attorney for. And Kellyanne Conway defending the man who she, like, they are lawyers who are really in service of Trump and cannot criticize him under their construct of their ethical duty to him.
I would like to see, if and when we get through this, every lawyer that worked for him should be permanently disbarred and should never work in the profession again in any capacity. I think that should be one of the new Nuremberg trial rules. Blanche, you're out. Fuck you. You're done. Go get a job.
And there are consequences, right? You've seen from the outlandish effort to try to, help Trump stay in power despite losing the election. There have been consequences for Rudy Giuliani. There have been consequences.
Oh my God! It took like 5 years for one place to disbar him.
I'm not defending the lack of speed. I'm totally with you on that.
Insane to me.
Totally with you on that. Yeah.
Just, he said as he poured more whiskey into his glass. Okay, so let's pivot because
let's pivot. We have an amazing expert here. We want to get your views, Nina.
When I did my live Prevail thingy, I had, both of you came on, which was lovely. And Nina, I realized after, I was like, I forgot to ask her about all the RFK stuff, because you wrote a great book called Virus, about how all of the, there it is. Just this whole
still relevant.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting.
More now than it was before.
Very well done. About the process of it, like how everything happened, like step by step. So now we're looking at this guy who, again, make America healthy again. We find the least healthy looking human in the whole fucking country and make him this guy. But what's going on there that people should know about? What are you hearing from your sources?
Well, let's just start with, I don't want to do, free advertising for New York Magazine, but the cover story about the Kennedys is fantastic. And I'll just read you a little bit of what, what's his name? Wiedemann, the writer, picks up this anecdote. When Bobby was a young man, Ethel regularly threw him out of the house for drug use and other chaotic behavior. When he was 13, a Kota Mundi, those little South African animals, he kept as a pet, attacked Ethel and sent her into premature labor with his brother Douglas. In high school, after Ethel excoriated him for getting arrested for marijuana possession in Hyannis, he packed up and drove west without telling anyone in his family where he was going, eventually selling his car and hopping freight trains. Bobby seemed to relish the chance to break away from the family and ride the rails with the vagabonds. I could be one of them, he said later, and not a Kennedy. That's just a little anecdote from this. This person is damaged. He was a former heroin addict. He's had issues with women. He's a joke, and he's a joke, but he's a dangerous joke. And the reason that he's in that job, if you remember, it was Don Jr. who was sort of brought him into the fold. And in 2024, stuff happens so fast that we're forgetting these ridiculous things that happen. And at that time, Don Jr. said, and I'm paraphrasing, something like, "Yeah, I loved the idea of him being put in charge of an agency, one of those ABC agencies," and he was laughing about it. Why? Because this whole thing is a troll. It started off as a troll. John Jr. that's trolling, right? And his dad put him in there, but it's more than a troll now, because what it is it's advancing their eugenic poor. That's what this administration is up to. Darren Beatty, if you remember who that guy is, he was Rubio's head of public diplomacy for a minute. This white nationalist guy who was kicked out of the first Trump administration for his views, openly eugenic, openly tweeting on January 6th. You can still find them, and I've published them, to all the Black people, and one by one in this country. You need to learn your place. You need to learn your place in society. He erased them all, but he's a total racist and he's a eugenicist. And there is what's going on with the vaccinations remake here, or the pullback on vaccinations, really is a eugenic operation. In addition to the other things they're doing with Medicaid and so on, they have absolutely decided that the poor and the ill and the disabled are weakening the herd. That's how they think. I'm not kidding you. I think that's where this is coming from. I mean, we can talk more about what they're doing with the, specifics with, Susan Moneras and her coming up before the Senate today, and her telling her side of the story, where he has just slandered her, called her a liar. And, Fox News picks that up and slanders her further. Vaccinations are, they're going to learn. People are going to learn very soon that this is not a good idea. I mean, they're babies, around 1900 and up till 1920, the average lifespan of Americans was the average was 48. Why? Not because everybody died at 48, but because babies died all the time, and children died. And nobody had cancer. And also they've thrown out all the cancer research. So cancer patients are not going to get the kind of care that we would have gotten if we get it in 5 years. There was a trajectory going in a certain direction, and they've just turned it back. But just as far as the children's vaccines go, these people who are sort of on board with this, and I know some people, actually. I know woo-woo medical people. I know people who thought the mRNA vaccine was going to hurt them because it might get into their DNA, despite all evidence otherwise. I know that they're on the left as well. They're falling for this stuff. The lifespan was 48. It is now a lot longer, because babies are not dying of diseases that we don't even know the names of. And the ones who didn't die were ill, they were sickened, and blind. And the family members would have witnessed all of this suffering, were damaged by the trauma of watching it. That is what, then this, the human race has only had about 200 years of actually understanding what it is that kills us. We didn't really, it's not that long a time since they identified the pathogens, and they were able to see the pathogens, then they identified them, and then they made vaccines to stop them. Now, do vaccines have risks? Yes, they have risks. All of these things have risks. What Bobby's done is he's plucked away at that. And he's a madman. He's plucked away at it. He's obsessed with the risk aspect of it, and he's hooked up with all of these defense lawyers, product liability lawyers, who make money off of this. And it's a runaway train. And I didn't watch the hearings today. That I read that Cassidy was, giving her some time. Senator Cassidy, who voted for him? Who voted Bobby in? I think Murkowski was the only one who didn't. Am I right? Or did they all go down the road? They're the ones who can bear this, the guilt of this. And I'm talking about GUILT guilt. It's disgusting.
Yeah, it really is astonishing. I was just talking with my husband today about the latest speculation that there are now more than 200,000 kids who have not received the polio vaccination.
One in six now families are like, maybe not. We know better.
It is just shocking. And I just have to believe, and I know that this is terrible of me to say, but like, I feel like it's the people who were the least studious in my high school science classes who now think of themselves as experts because they can Google and get their bias or their ridiculous notion affirmed by some quack. And now we have an absolute quack at the top of the Department of Health and Human Services in Bobby Kennedy, and the unleashing this pestilence on our populace is so reckless. It's just so unbelievably dangerous. And like you said, it's across the board. There are people who are reporting in online that they can't get the COVID vaccine from their local pharmacy because they're not 65, and it's now restricted in some states at the directives of this administration to make it harder to get the COVID vaccine unless you go and get your doctor to prescribe it for you. And then that you might have to pay the broader cost of that vaccine, which is a really important intermediary to protect people from getting the worst forms of COVID and dying. And the immorality of the so-called debate around these issues, and there are some prominent people who I'm not going to name today who were also spreading lies about COVID, spreading lies to young people and others about COVID. The lies of it, this idea that we should just go with quote herd immunity, which actually means lots and lots and lots of people dying, lots more people dying, and actually not having an efficacious result when you actually have a vaccine that can prevent people's deaths, combined with people who I used to know, who I no longer associate with because they had just the complete contemptuous callousness to try to dismiss the number of deaths by saying, well, those were comorbidities. And I was like, you know what a comorbidity is? It's like high blood pressure or, being on an anti-statin or pre-diabetic or any number of things. Like all, those people would not die but for COVID. And you want to dismiss their deaths as just, too bad, so sad, because you want to reduce the numbers for your Republican buddies. It is so wrong and rank. And then on top of that all, like you said, Nina, it's not as though there isn't a mountain of science proving the usefulness of these vaccines. But it's also the case, and these aren't equivalent, but it's also the case that, in our population, there's a teeny tiny percent of people who are allergic to strawberries or peanuts or shellfish or maybe some vaccine. And that has been a calculus that our government has made in favor of the population as a whole, that we're going to make vaccines widely available and require them for public schools, except for now in Florida, for example, because they save people's lives. And as Greg said, they keep people from having permanent blindness for the rest of their lives or permanent hearing loss or other permanent damages. And now we have a bunch of know-nothings, both at the helm of the Department of Homeland Health and Human Services and in these individual sort of homeschool units where people think that they researched it themselves and somehow know better than epidemiologists and others. It is out frigging outrageous and so dangerous and so incredibly selfish.
I think if you went back in time somehow and got all of the mothers who had to watch their children die horribly of diphtheria, which what happens in diphtheria is you have the diphter in your throat and it slowly grows and grows and grows and then you suffocate to death. Exactly. So you're watching your baby's face turn fucking purple and there's nothing you could do about it. And then they just die in the crib or whatever. If you went and told them, hey, all you have to do is this thing, and then nobody will ever get diphtheria again. You want that? They would all 100% say, yes, please sign me up. So vaccines are the single best thing about being alive right now in this moment in history, period. Full stop. Nothing even comes close. Fantasy football maybe is a distant second, but vaccines for sure, number one. And I remember going to get my COVID vaccine in a repurposed out of business Best Buy in Kingston, New York. And I almost started crying, it was awesome. It was like the full power of government doing things well and being able to organize the logistics of doing this thing. It was like being in a really well-run airport. And, and I felt so grateful and lucky to be alive now, but we're not going to listen to that because somebody named Kennedy who used to go on the trains knows better than we do. It's ridiculous. It's a joke. I don't know. Nina, hold your book up again.
It's meant to be a joke. And that's the whole point of, whole point of him. That's why Don Jr. said, haha, this is a book about the, the race to the virus, what the mRNA vaccination is. It's short. I wrote it in a couple of months, actually, right after the vaccination was brought into use. And then part of it, a big chunk of it, is about where the conspiracy theories came from and the use of that kind of, the other part of the issue with science and why they're, it's so easy for them to attack science now does have to do with the pandemic and the things that happen. But one of the things I learned is that the human brain has a really hard time with uncertainty. Everyone's does. It's like we're hardwired about it. And science, uncertainty is built into these things. And so we were told, oh, it's not, you've got to wash your hands in the beginning, and then, oh, no, put the masks on. Mm-hmm. And then people were like, well, they didn't get that right. You think you're smart, don't ya? Well, you're not. It's that kind of mentality. They hate, there's part of that with Trump. Smart people don't like me, because he thinks he's so smart. And but the smart people are the ones who go, you know what? We need to know more. This is what we know now. Mm-hmm. And this is as good as we're going to get. And the scientific method is that you ask the question and then you test it and you see if it is what you think it is. And then somebody else comes along and tests it again, and they test it again. And it's a process. But the ditching of expertise, wholesale ditching of expertise that's been going on here. And, there's some reasons there are reasons why that's happened that are legit. I think there are things people were told huge lies about the Iraq war. Right. And, we were told, the economy was great when my town, all the towns in the Midwest throughout the 80s were being boarded up and they weren't doing a damn thing about it. So, there's a lot of expertise that wasn't actually helpful to people. But the one thing, and I'm with you, Greg, every single time I go into my annual physical or have a checkup or, the mammograms and, stuff that's like molecular science and nuclear science, every time I go in, I just think this is the one thing that the human race can be proud of. It's incredible that we've gotten this far. And if you look back, and again, I learned this when I was writing the book.
Yep.
For the entire history of our species, we were utterly helpless. Until about 200 years ago, when some years before, 200 years ago, when they started being able to grind lenses into a microscope so that they could actually see what these little things were. And then they realized, that's why the smallpox thing works, because they're giving them dead versions or weaker versions of those little things. And then they started experimenting and started with rabies, and then they moved on. And yes, they had a big problem with the polio vaccine in the 50s. There was an accident, and they put too much live virus in, or there was a live virus that snuck past all of their safeguards at a lab in California, and it killed a number of kids, and it caused disability in a large number of children. And that actually kicked off the product liability law that we live with now. I think it was Melvin Belli who took that case on and made millions, and product liability took off. Yeah. And that's, it changed everything. It's changed things for these companies. Pharmas don't like to make vaccines because they don't make a lot of money on them. And yes, one person, and that's who Kennedy's mobbed up with. He's mobbed up with these lawyers. He's actually brought one into the his panel of experts I just read that. One of the panel, the fake experts that he's bringing in on the vaccines, not the scientists. He's bringing one of these product liability lawyers who spent his entire career looking for ways to persuade a jury that his clients are worth, should get billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars for the risk, for having taken the risk and being the unlucky ones to not have to have been allergic to or to have reacted badly to this tiny minority of people. And yes, it's terrible when it happens. And yes, they do deserve to be compensated. But that doesn't mean that the entire public health system needs to be thrown out.
That's right. And the numbers are, like you said, it's like 0.0000000
infinitesimal
of the adverse consequences. But also, and I think we want to ask you to stay on for the next segment, Nina. But the other part that you both referred to was the other part of this administration's reckless actions to derail really important cancer research that's been underway, long-term studies that have been
unforgivable.
Unforgivable.
Unforgivable. It's
indefensible.
Indefensible. It makes absolutely no sense. Again, but the only way it does make sense if you look at it through the eugenics lens. Mm-hmm. That's the conclusion I've come to. It's not that you see them wiping out these grants. And then you see pictures of women in the labs, and you're like, oh yeah, that's what they wanted. They wanted to get rid of these women. They're women in the sciences. That's what they want. They want brown people and women out.
And education.
They've given their DEI. Women are in the labs, right? So that's I guess their
part of their approach.
The real reason is, I think, that they're just like, you know what, enough weak people, enough people who need this kind of help. And let's let our, tech bros, bottle their sperm and farm out some baby mamas and make more white babies who are supposed to be geniuses like Sam Altman, who isn't, by the way. We can have another talk about AI and that.
Well, on that note, Nina, I was going to say, Greg had another point, but I was going to say, I have to believe that part of the other maneuvering we're seeing around the maps is that they know these policies suck. These policies stink. They're wretched. They're dangerous. They're hurting people, killing people. And that the American people, I still believe, I retain the optimism that the American people, as they see this unfold, that a majority and a growing majority are going to say, this is outrageous and we don't want it. So but sometimes, unfortunately, it's like a bad rock song. You don't know what you have until it's gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that some of it is not going to be, they're not going to be able to restart some of those things. No. I think they walked away from like freezers full of samples and stuff. I mean, it's not like they just shut them down, and it's appalling, and it's worse, I think, than even we can kind of imagine, because we're not in those labs with those scientists. I think that it's a massive, the words they're using is like, this is a generational setback.
Yeah, it's the dark ages. It's a version of the dark ages for us.
It's gone, and all of these brains will have to go to Europe and.
Which they will. People will hopefully,
or China. It's China. China's going to leap ahead, and in 10 years or 15 years, there are people be going to China to get their treatment. The kind of like people with money are going to be going over there to get their cancer treatment, and so on. I really think it's going to happen.
Now,
and we'll revert to the agrarian, the poor, ignorant agrarian nation that they think we are.
Just like Putin wants. So one of the things in your book, Nina, the virus book, you talk about the what's his name, Defoe, Diary of a Plague Year.
Yes.
And one of the takeaways,
which all of us picked up when it started, right? Did you not go, oh, that? Now we're living in one of those times.
And one of the things that was your takeaway from that, which is, once the plague was over, nobody ever wanted to fucking think about it or talk about it ever again. They were like, great, it's over. Let's never Let's just put that in the back mirror.
And that's not just in the Defoe time. It's in our time as well.
Right.
I mean,
it's a natural thing.
It's a phenomenon. And that's why, like, after 1919, people didn't talk about it,
No.
I mean,
And a lot of people died of that.
Trump's dad died in 2 days. He caught the Spanish flu and he was dead in a day or two.
Who was?
Trump's dad.
Oh, right. Yeah.
He was left. I mean, sorry, Fred Trump's
granddad. His
grandfather died. And that changed the fortune of the family utterly. I mean, that was, actually the Trump organization started because he died, and the grandmother, Trump organization started by a woman. Another thing that any other politician in America would be like, hey, look, women, my grandmother started this company that is now, nope, doesn't want to mention it. And Fred Trump, the son, was a teenager and did did the building in the early years, but it was because the grandfather died. Right. And died very, very quickly, and left the mother almost destitute with this little plot of land in Queens.
Now, speaking of old but very good English language literature, you wrote a piece about free speech and about John Milton, and you and I were going back and forth about the 19th sonnet. So, and you said, "Oh, I can say that. I know that. I have that memorized. I can just recite it off the top of my head." So, okay, I want to see if you can do it. Ready?
Okay, so it's actually it's Milton. It's John Milton's. Yes.
When I consider how my life is spent,
half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me now useless, though my soul more bent to serve my Maker, lest he returning chide, doth God ask for day labor light denied? He fondly asks, but patience to prevent that murmur soon replies, God does not need either man's work or his own gifts. His state is kingly. Thousands at his bidding speed, in post or land and ocean without rest. They also serve who only stand and wait.
Bravo, you did it. Wow, I'm impressed. Okay. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, I memorized. I was studying my 17th century literature was my. I ended up doing a lot of that in undergrad, and I did my thesis on the free speech, the prose, the tract that I wrote about Areopagitica. But I memorized that because I used to drive up Route 55 in the snow back to Chicago, 4 or 5 hours sometimes, and the radio would go out, and I would talk to myself and memorize poetry.
Lisa, you're on mute.
I was going to say, I wish I could recite a poem of that length. I used to. I once had this amazing English teacher in the public school that I went to, and she wanted us to memorize and recite 100 poems, not all at once. But the ones that really stick in my brain back then is much less refined than the one you just recited.
Well,
it's by the humorist. I was going to say it's by the humorist Ogden Nash, and he said, "The Lord in all His wisdom created the fly, and then forgot to tell us why." And I think that's true.
Ogden Nash is the turtle lives between plated decks that practically conceal its sex.
Yes.
I think it clever of the turtle in such a fix to be so fertile. That's awesome.
Ogden Nash wrote, the only trouble with a kitten is that eventually it becomes a cat. And then he wrote, the 1 El Llama, he's a priest, the 2 El Llama, he's a beast, and I will bet a silk pajama there isn't any 3 El Llama.
Oh God. Okay, we're at 9 o'clock. So what you guys usually do on this show is say we don't have time for the last 2 topics, and we should go into the but do we have anything else to add? Lisa, do you want to mention anything that we didn't hit?
Yeah, I'll just say 2 quick things and we can pick them up next time. One is I definitely want to tell you more about Kash Patel and all the goings on today on his efforts to try to distance himself from Epstein, the files yet again in the House, just as with the Senate. And also, it's not just my book that's out this month. There's a book by Amy Coney Barrett who got a much bigger advance. I'd say $2 million, a big advance to write this book where she basically claims, oh yeah, she was always against Roe. notwithstanding the statements that she made to try to, get away from that at her hearings to confirm her just days before the actual election day, and as Americans were voting Trump out of office. But we can take that up another time if you want, or we could dig into a little bit. We are at the top of the hour. What do you think?
Let's go. I mean, real quick, and then we'll go. We'll go into the half. Nina, the show ends with a half, right? Because it's 5:08.5, and the half is always something nice. It's glass half full.
Okay.
You have to go. Are you cool? You hang out?
No, I'm
for 5
cool.
more minutes.
My dog's napping quietly over there.
Right. So you know this, like Amy Coney Barrett. Just for people, so people know, Amy Coney Barrett was given reportedly a $2 million advance to write this book that came out on the 9th of September. Okay, the way that publishing works, just so people know, when you get an advance, it's called that because it's an advance on royalties. So what that means is Amy Coney Barrett needs to sell a fuck ton of books to earn back the $2 million advance. If she makes $3 a book, $3 a copy, which is a lot actually in the publishing land, that means she's going to have to sell 666 copies of this book in order to win back her advance. That's not going to happen even with all these like organizations buying it. So what's going on here really is that a publishing company, and I wrote about this on my Substack, is basically giving her money because they know that when the book comes out, these, right-wing organizations like Turning Point and whatever, the Turning Point, which brought Don Jr.'s book Triggered, which got it into the #1 slot on the New York Times bestseller list. They game the system, right? And Democrats do this too. Bernie Sanders did the same thing. His campaign spent $500,000 buying his fucking book. So that's it. Just put a pin in it. But the whole publishing model is a really good way to shovel money to people without anybody batting an eyelash. Just like real estate is a really good way for Russian oligarchs to launder their money, and maybe a real estate guy.
I mean, who's her publisher? I don't know who gave
Sentinel.
it.
Sentinel. I actually did journalism, Nina. I did journalism. I emailed her and asked what the deal was with it, and they never got back to me. So.
But what is Sentinel? Is it like
it's some place. They do.
Is it one of the big ones? Is it an imprint of Harper?
It's an imprint of one of the bigger ones, I think. Yeah. I can't remember.
I think it's under Penguin.
Yeah.
Which is Random House, which is what? I don't know who owns them now. Bertle and one. Anyway. Well, I'm on the upside. Okay. I've just got a new book. Going back to commercial. I just signed a contract with Simon & Schuster to write a book unrelated to anything that we've talked about or anything to do with
both of those things are good.
And but it occurs to me that as a writer and who does publish with these large commercial companies, it really doesn't hurt to have an in for your company to have an in with the Supreme Court in case there's a libel suit.
Yeah,
just saying.
Yeah.
I was looking at it.
I mean, that's not money that I would think would be wasted.
Yeah, I was looking at this as a broader sort of right wing thing, although there have been advances to both Democratic appointees and Republican appointees, but it really is appalling because, like Greg said, they're not going to sell as many books as to cover the advance. It'd be highly unlikely, legitimately, to sell enough books to cover that size of an advance.
It's fucking impossible. It's never going to happen.
And I had actually pitched a reporter about this story. And I said, because it's just like, it's a gift. It's a massive gift. It's a massive gift to these justices.
Yeah.
And you
don't ever have to pay it back, by the way.
Yeah. No, it's like you
forever. Just get it forever.
Yeah.
And at one
point, yeah. And I was
didn't Clarence Thomas write one too? And
yes, I was going to say, because
he never wrote the fucking book.
Clarence Thomas, yeah, he had one that was paid in 3 like $600 and some $1,000 increments, and somehow the money never consolidated into an asset, at least in a way that was visible in his financial disclosures. And so I kept thinking, like, what did Clarence Thomas spend, per year for 3 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars on? And that question became more profound when we learned that he wasn't paying for vacations. The story that I helped bring forward with the photo of Clarence Thomas and Leonard Leo and Harlan Crow that my team found when we were looking at the right-wing attack on Ketanji Brown Jackson, and other research that we did around Harlan Crow's super jet and his super yacht and his super.
Oh, I didn't know that. I had no idea that you were the source of Harlan Crow. Harlan Crow is the reason I started the Freak Show.
Well, I'm not the only source, but we did pitch that story about the photo, and more. And Harlan Crow, the Nazi, as you know,
the Dallas
Nazi memorabilia
collector. Nazi memorabilia. I mean, that's why I started the Freak Show, because I saw that picture in the Washington Monthly. It was on a weekend. I still remember it. And I'm like,
yeah,
these people are freaks. Like, now there's no question. And somebody should start a podcast called American Freak Show. And then I was about to tweet that, and then I was like, that's actually a good idea. Maybe I should do it. Yes. And that you just started it as a joke, and then here we are 3 years later.
It's a really good. I really like this.
There's an unlimited number of freaks in this freak show.
Yeah, and and Senator Whitehouse talks about the creepy billionaires. Like, it really, like, you couldn't the cast of characters between the cabinet. It's like these people cast for this cabinet who are just manifestly unfit for these roles, these responsibilities, and then these billionaires. It's almost like a Bond film come to life, and this is Spectre. Like, these billionaires and some of these.
There is a
Spectre so much cooler though.
It's also more almost like Rocky Horror Picture Show or something.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's that sort of garish and camp. And
touch me. Yes, it's very much.
But the songs are really good. The songs are way better. The songs are good.
The songs are really good. I love the songs. I was just listening to it the other day, actually. Yeah.
I don't know. Someday this will be an opera, or a great. Yeah, it'll be like something.
I hope it just goes away. I hope it's like the plague that we just never think of it again.
Yes,
Lisa, what's the half?
Okay, so the glass half full this time. So we always end on a glass half full, and today I just wanted to lift up. There is enormous challenges in DC. There's a lot of legitimate complaints about what some of the Democratic leaders are saying or not saying in response to the moment we're in the response to the months we've been in terms of really having strong patriotic statements of, against this growing authoritarianism, to have a strong response to this U.S. Supreme Court, this Roberts Court that's out of control and has used, I think, 18 emergency orders to basically unleash Trump over the objections, the detailed written rulings by these lower court judges following precedent saying that Trump couldn't do X or Y or Z, including racial profiling. There's just been, there have been a number of courageous stands, and there also have been, some actions that have not seemed up to the moment we're in. And sometimes I'll hear people say, well, yeah, but they don't have the gavels. They can't hold a hearing. They can't issue subpoenas. They don't own the agenda. They're not in charge. And that's true. But there are things that can be done. And something that was just done this past week is that Senator Adam Schiff, who is, one of the really, I think, stand-up guys on the impeachment of Donald Trump, who's been targeted by Trump with ridiculous, name calling and nonsense. He issued a report last week that revealed how much of our tax dollars have been going into these absurd banners of Trump hanging at the U.S. Department of Agriculture and other places. Trump first, a sort of thing. These are not the banners that were printed this weekend in England
of him and Epstein,
with Trump and Epstein. Maybe I'd allow some of my tax dollars to go for that, quite frankly, but that's not on the table. Instead, there's this sort of hagiography. It's an iconography of authoritarianism. Now, there were some pre-existing signs that were like, this department was created when Abraham Lincoln was president, and so there was a picture of Lincoln. But that's, I think, different historically than depicting a current office holder with this big head in a sort of Orwellian 1984 way. Anyway, so Schiff and his team issued a report. I'll post the report in the comments so people can read it. It exposed how the Trump administration was using our tax dollars for this propaganda. And just today, the Trump banner was taken down from USDA. Now, when it was noticed that the Trump banner was down, the Trump officials said that they were taking it down to reinforce it, to make it stronger for the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Because, that's what we need to celebrate the Declaration of Independence is big king-like photos of the guy in the White House. But anyway, they did take it down, and it's just one small thing in the grand scheme of things that members of Congress can do without having the gavel, without having the theoretical subpoena power, without having the ability to call the votes. They can do things like this, like investigate what the hell is going on and shine a light on it and help people understand how these people are wasting our money promoting the Knave. Yeah.
The Knave. That's it. You came full circle.
I came full circle.
Okay. So now
on that, I toast.
We drink to this.
I drink I toast.
I bring my glass.
That's right.
Cheers.
I raise the glass. It. Cheers.
We'll allow it.
All right. Well, this has been your midweek break. This has been a 5-8.5 with Nina Burleigh, our fabulous guest.
Burleigh.
Okay.
Thank you, Greg.
Nina Burleigh. He told me to before the
show. No, you have to give Lisa grace with the names.
Yes, I do have a reader's vocabulary. It's a terrible thing, but and Greg Olear, my partner and ally in all this, and thanks to all you listeners out there for putting up with me, including my occasional mispronunciation.
Thank you.
All.
I'm so glad you guys are doing two of my favorite people together.
Yes,
so good.
Thank you, and please tune in on Friday night for the original 5-8, and check out Greg's columns on Substack. Subscribe to Prevail. Subscribe to Nina's Substack, and we're all in this together. And some days and some weeks are harder than others, but we have to choose hope. We have to choose to not give in. So keep on fighting. Keep standing up. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody.